the resourceful wife. In the final year of King Yonsan's reign, a time of unprecedented wickedness plagued the kingdom. Yonsan himself was the root of many of these evils. He ordered his eunuchs and attendants to seize any women of notable beauty from the homes of the nobility, regardless of their status or the objections of their families. These women were taken by force to serve the king's desires, and he even shamelessly claimed that the wives of various ministers preferred him over their husbands and wanted to stay with him in the palace. Such audacious actions were widely known and left the people stunned and outraged. The king's tyranny and licentiousness led to his eventual downfall. With the support of his disillusioned subjects, he was dethroned, and King Chengzhong took his place. Amidst these turbulent times, there was a young wife of a high-ranking minister known for her exceptional beauty. One day, she received a summons to the palace. Unlike other women, who were terrified and despaired upon being called, she exhibited no fear. She calmly dressed and presented herself at the palace. When King Yonsan saw her, he ordered her to approach him. As she drew near, an unbearable stench suddenly filled the room. The king, repulsed, covered his nose with his fan, turned away, spat, and exclaimed, "Goodness, I can't tolerate this one. Take her away." Thus she was dismissed and avoided any further indignity. This clever escape was the result of her foresight and ingenuity. Anticipating that she might be summoned at any moment, she devised a plan to protect herself. She kept 2 pieces of rotting meat, foul and putrid, always on hand. On the day she was called to the palace, she placed these slices under her arms as she dressed. The resulting horrid smell was so overpowering and inexplicable that it saved her from the king's advances. Those who learned of her cunning praised her bravery and intelligence. Her quick thinking and courage not only preserved her honor, but also served as a remarkable example of resourcefulness in the face of tyranny. Source: Imbang. The boxed-up governor. A certain literary official was, at one time, the governor of the city of Gyeongju. Whenever he visited the mayor, it was his custom, upon encountering dancing girls, to tap them on the head with his pipe and declare, "These girls are devils, ogres, goblins. How can you tolerate them in your presence?" Naturally, this behavior made him unpopular. The mayor, in particular, detested the governor's conduct. In secret, the mayor sent a message to the dancing girls, proposing, "If any of you can, by any means, deceive this governor and put him to shame, I'll reward you richly." Among the girls was a young one, barely more than a child, who claimed she could. The governor lived in the quarter of the city where the Confucian temple was located, and he had only one servant, a young lad. The young dancing girl who undertook to ensnare him often passed by the main gateway of the temple, dressed as a common woman of the town. She would frequently call the governor's boy to her, sometimes showing just her profile, other times revealing her full form as she stood in the gateway. The boy would go out to meet her, and they would speak briefly before she departed. This happened once or twice a day and continued for some time. Curious about this frequent visitor, the governor eventually asked the boy, "Who is this woman that comes so often to call you?" "She is my sister," the boy replied. "Her husband left on a peddling journey over a year ago and has not yet returned. Consequently, she has no one else to help her, so she often comes to see me." One evening, while the boy was away eating his meal and the governor was alone, the woman came to the main gateway and called for the boy. The governor, seeing her, responded in his stead and invited her in. She entered, blushing and appearing very shy, standing modestly aside. The governor said, "My boy is absent right now, but I need a light for my pipe. Could you please get one?" She brought the light, and then he asked, "Would you sit down and smoke a little with me?" She replied, "How could I dare do such a thing?" He insisted, "There is no one else here now. Never mind." Seeing no way to refuse, she complied and smoked a little. The governor, finding himself suddenly charmed by her, confessed, "I have seen many beautiful women, but you are the prettiest of them all. Since seeing you, I have forgotten how to eat or sleep. Could you come to live with me here? I am quite alone and no one will know." She feigned shock, exclaiming, "Your Excellency is a noble, and I am a low-class woman. How can you suggest such a thing? Is this a joke?" He assured her, "I mean it truly, no joke at all." To emphasize his sincerity, he swore an oath, "I mean every word." She then said, Since you speak so earnestly, I am truly grateful and shall come. Overjoyed, he exclaimed. Meeting you thus is wonderful indeed. However, she added, there is another matter. I understand that where your excellency is now staying is a very sacred place, and that according to ancient law, men are forbidden to have women here. Is that true? The governor, placing a hand on her shoulder, said, Well, really now, how do you know this? You are right. What shall we do about it? She made answer, If you'll depend on me, I'll arrange a plan. My home is nearby, and I am also alone, so if you come quietly at night to me, we can meet and no one will know. I shall send a felt hat by the boy, and you can wear that for disguise. With this commoner's felt hat on, no one will know you. The governor was greatly delighted and said, How is it that you can plan so wonderfully? I shall do as you suggest. Now you be sure to be on hand. He repeated this 2 or 3 times. The woman went and entered the house indicated. When evening came, she sent the hat by the boy. The governor arrived as agreed, and she received him, lit the lamp, and brought him refreshments and drink. They talked and drank together, and he called her to come to him. The woman hesitated for a moment when suddenly there was a call heard from the outside, and a great disturbance took place. She bent her head to listen and then gave a cry of alarm, saying, That's the voice of my husband who has come. I was unfortunate, and so had this miserable wretch apportioned to my lot. He is the most despicable among mortals. For murder and arson he has no equal. 3 years ago he left me, and I took another husband, and we've had nothing to do with each other since. I can't imagine why he should come now. He is evidently very drunk, too, from the sound of his voice. Your Excellency has really fallen into a terrible plight. What shall I do? The woman went out then and answered, saying, Who comes thus at midnight to make such a disturbance? The voice replied, Don't you know my voice? Why don't you open the door? She answered, Are you not Cholo, Brass Tiger, and have we not separated for good years ago? Why have you come? The voice from outside answered back, Your leaving me and taking another man has always been a matter of deepest resentment on my part. I have something special to say to you, and he pounded the door open and came thundering in. The woman rushed back into the room, saying, Your Excellency must escape in some way or other. In such a little thatched hut, there was no place possible for concealment but an empty rice box only. Please get into this, said she, and she lifted the lid and hurried him in. The governor, in his haste and deshabille, was bundled into the box. He then heard from within this fellow come into the room and quarrel with his wife. She said, We have been separated 3 years already. What reason have you to come now and make such a disturbance? Said he, You cast me off and took another man, therefore I have come for the clothes that I left and the other things that belong to me. Then she threw out his belongings to him, but he said, pointing to the box, That's mine. She replied, That's not yours. I bought that myself with 2 rolls of silk goods. But, said he, one of those rolls I gave you, and I'm not going to let you have it. Even though you did give it, do you mean to say that for 1 roll of silk you will carry away this box? I'll not consent to it. Thus they quarreled and contradicted each other. If you don't give me the box, said he, I'll enter a suit against you at the mayor's. A little later, the day dawned, and so he had the box carried off to the mayor's office to have the case decided by law, while the woman followed. When they entered the court, already the mayor was seated in the judgment place, and here they presented their case concerning the box. The mayor, after hearing, decided thus. Since you each have a half share in its purchase, there is nothing for me to do but to divide it between you. Bring a saw, said he. The servants brought the saw and began on the box, when suddenly from the inner regions came forth a cry, Save me! Oh, save me! The mayor, in pretended astonishment, said, Why, there's a man's voice from the inside, and ordered that it should be opened. The servants managed to find the key, and at last the lid came back, and from the inner quarters there came forth a half-dressed man. On seeing him, the whole place was put into convulsions of laughter, for it was none other than the governor. How is it that your Excellency finds yourself in this box in this unaccountable way? Asked the mayor. Please come out. The governor, huddling himself together as well as he could, climbed onto the open veranda. He held his head down and nearly died of shame. The mayor, splitting his sides with laughter, ordered clothes to be brought, and the first thing that came was a woman's green dress coat. The governor hastily turned it inside out, slipped it on, and made a dash for his quarters in the Confucian temple. That day he left the place never to return, and even to the present time in Gyeongju, they laugh and tell the story of the boxed-up governor.
The man who lost his legs. There was a merchant in Cheongju who used to go to Quelpart to buy seaweed. One time, when he drew up on the shore, he saw a man shuffling along the ground toward the boat. The man crept nearer and finally took hold of the side with both his hands and jumped in. When I looked at him, said the merchant, I found he was an old man without any legs. Astonished, I asked, How is it, old man, that you have lost your legs? He replied, I lost my legs on a trip once when I was shipwrecked, and a great fish bit them off. How did that happen? Inquired the merchant. The old man said, We were caught in a gale and driven until we touched on some island. Before us on the shore stood a high castle with a great gateway. The 20 or so of us who were together in the storm-tossed boat were all exhausted from cold and hunger and lying exposed. We landed and managed to go together to the house. There was only one man in it, whose height was terrible to behold, and whose chest was many spans around. His face was black and his eyes large and rolling. His voice was like the braying of a monstrous donkey. Our people made motions showing that they wanted something to eat. The man made no reply but securely fastened the front gate. After this, he brought an armful of wood, put it in the middle of the courtyard, and made a fire. When the fire blazed up, he rushed after us, caught a young lad from our company, cooked him before our eyes, pulled him to pieces, and ate him. We were all reduced to a state of horror, not knowing what to do. We gazed at each other in dismay and stupefaction. When he had eaten his fill, he went up into a veranda and opened a jar, from which he drank some kind of spirit. After drinking it, he uttered the most gruesome and awful noises. His face grew very red, and he lay down and slept. His snoring was like the roaring of thunder. We planned then to make our escape and tried to open the large gate, but one leaf was about 24 feet across and so thick and heavy that with all our strength we could not move it. The walls, too, were 150 feet high, so we could do nothing with them. We were like fish in a pot, beyond all possible ways of escape. We held each other's hands and cried. Among us, one man devised a plan. We had a knife, and he took it. While the monster was drunk and asleep, he decided to stab its eyes and cut its throat. We replied, We are all doomed to death anyway, let's try, and we made our way onto the veranda and stabbed its eyes. It gave an awful roar and struck out on all sides to catch us. We rushed here and there, escaping out of the court and into the rear garden. In this enclosure there were about 60 pigs and sheep. We rushed in among them. The monster floundered about, waving its arms after us, but it didn't catch any of us. We were all mixed up, sheep, pigs, and people. When it did catch something, it was either a sheep or a pig. So it opened the front gate to send all the animals out. We each took a pig or sheep on our backs and made straight for the gate. The monster felt each one, and finding it to be a pig or a sheep, let it go. Thus, we all got out and rushed for the boat. A little later, it came and sat on the bank, roaring threats at us. A lot of other giants came at its call. They took steps of 30 feet or so, racing after us, catching the boat and making it fast. But we took axes and struck at the hands that held it, and so got free at last and out to the open sea. Again, a great wind arose, and we ran onto the rocks and were all destroyed. Everyone was engulfed in the sea and drowned. I alone got hold of a piece of boat timber and survived. Then a horrible fish from the sea came swimming after me and bit off my legs. At last, I drifted back home, and here I am. When I think of it still, my teeth chatter and my bones shiver. My 8 lucky stars are very bad. That's why it happened to me. I hope this helps.
10,000 devils. Han Chun-kyom was the son of a provincial secretary. He enrolled in 1579 and graduated in 1586. He received the final wishes of King Sonjo, sitting by his side taking notes for 7 hours. From 1608 to 1623, he served as the generalissimo of the army, and later was elevated to the rank of prince. A certain Prince Han of Chongchong province had a distant relative who was an uncouth countryman living in extreme poverty. This relative visited him from time to time. Han pitied his cold and hungry condition, gave him clothes to wear, and shared his food, urging him to stay and often extending his visits to several months. He felt sorry for him, but disliked his uncouthness and stupidity. On one visit, the poor relative suddenly announced his intention to return home, although the New Year's season was at hand. Han urged him to remain, saying, "It would be better for you to be comfortably housed at my home, eating cake and soup and enjoying quiet sleep, rather than riding through wind and weather at this time of year." Initially resistant, the relative eventually yielded to Han's insistence to stay. On New Year's Eve, he revealed to Prince Han, "I possess a peculiar kind of magic, by which I have under my control all manner of evil genii. The new year is when I call them up, review their names, and inspect them. If I neglect this, I would lose control altogether, and it would cause trouble among mortals. It is a matter of great importance, which is why I wish to go. Since you have detained me, I shall have to summon them at your Excellency's house and inspect them. I hope you will not object." Han, greatly astonished and alarmed, consented. The poor relative continued, "This is an extremely important matter, and I would like to use your central guest hall." Han agreed, so that night they washed and scoured the floors. The relative positioned himself with all dignity facing south, while Prince Han took up his station outside to observe. Soon he witnessed a variety of demons crush in at the door, horrible in appearance and awesome in manner. They lined up one after another until they filled the entire court, each bowing before the master, who, at that point, drew out a book, opened it, and began calling off names. Demon guards standing by the threshold repeated the call and checked off names, as in a government yamen. This continued from the second watch until the 5th hour of the morning. Han remarked, "It was indeed no lie when he told me 10,000 devils." One latecomer arrived after the roll call had ended, and another came by climbing over the wall. The man ordered them to be arrested and questioned thoroughly. The late arrival explained, "Lately, life has been harsh for me, and to survive, I had to resort to infecting a scholar's household in Yongnam with smallpox. It's a distant place, so I arrived too late for the roll call, which is a serious fault, I admit." The one who climbed the wall said, "I, too, have faced poverty and hunger. I had to introduce typhus into the household of a gentleman in Kyongkoi. When I heard the roll call was imminent, I rushed here in fear of arriving late and climbed the wall, which was indeed a sin." The man then loudly rebuked them, saying, "These criminals disobeyed my orders, caused illness, and committed serious sins. Moreover, they trespassed on a high official's property by climbing the wall." He ordered them to receive 100 lashes, wear the kang, and be locked in prison. Turning to the others, he instructed sternly, "Do not spread disease. Do you understand?" He repeated this admonition 3 times and emphasized it 5 times before dismissing them. The group of offenders departed, creating a clamor as they left through the gate. After a long time, they had all disappeared. Prince Han, who had been watching, saw the man now sitting alone in the hall. Everything was quiet, and the others had vanished. The cocks crowed, and morning arrived. Han was greatly astonished and asked about the legal principles behind such actions. The poor relation replied, "When I was young, I studied in a mountain monastery. There was an old priest there who had a unique appearance. He seemed frail and near death. The other priests mocked him and treated him with disdain. Only I showed him kindness, sharing my food and treating him well. One evening, under the bright moonlight, the old priest said to me, 'There's a cave behind this monastery with a breathtaking view. Will you come with me and see it?' I went with him, and when we crossed over the hills into the quiet night, he took a book from his robe and gave it to me, saying, 'I, old and nearing death, hold a great secret here. I've sought someone worthy throughout Korea and finally found you. My heart is content. Please take it.' I opened the book and discovered it was a catalog listing of demons, with magical inscriptions scattered throughout, and an explanation of the laws that govern the spirit world. The old priest transcribed a magical formula. Upon igniting it, numerous demons gathered, greatly alarming me. He then sat with me, calling out their names one by one, and instructed the demons, 'I am old now and departing. Therefore I entrust you to this young man. Obey him, and all will be well.' Already in possession of the book, I summoned them to me, read aloud the new commands, and dismissed them. The old priest and I returned to the temple and slept. I awoke early the next morning to visit him, but he had vanished. Thus, I acquired the knowledge of magic and have wielded it for over 20 years. What the world remains ignorant of, I now reveal to your excellency." Han was utterly astonished and asked, "Could I also attain this marvelous skill?" The man responded, "Your Excellency possesses great talent and can accomplish remarkable feats. However, the possessor of this craft must be someone poor, despised, and of no account. As a minister, it would not be suitable for you." The following day, he departed abruptly and never returned. Han sent a servant with a message to him. The servant finally located him amidst 1,000 mountain peaks, residing in a tiny straw hut no larger than a cockleshell. No neighbors, no one else. He called out to him, but the man refused to come. Another messenger was dispatched to invite him, yet he had already departed without a trace. Prince Han's children had heard this tale directly from him, and I, the author, received it from them. Imbang.